Living in New York, we can see the epidemic of homelessness and the worsening opioid crisis all around us, in our subways and on the streets. Homelessness is at an all-time high, with the homeless population being at the highest it's been since the Great Depression in the 1930s. We've deemed homeless addicts crackheads and criminals, and most people pay them little attention, are scared or disgusted by them, or I've also seen people harass the homeless on multiple occasions. This current uptick in the homelessness and drug abuse we see is largely the result of the opioid crisis. After research in the 90s showed that prescription opiates were not addictive and unlikely to be abused, American doctors began widely prescribing opiates. Unfortunately, the results of their research were not supported in the real world, and prescription opiates were actually abused at very high rates and caused the beginning of the American opioid crisis. Until the introduction of fentanyl, the number one cause of overdose death in the United States were prescription opiates. Nowadays, the leading cause of overdose death is no longer prescription opiates. Instead, it is fentanyl. Fentanyl is 100 times stronger than heroin, and even a small dose could lead to death. To make matters worse, fentanyl is laced in many drugs, not only opiates, making the opioid crisis even more widespread. The introduction and popularization of fentanyl in street drugs has made the drug epidemic in America even more deadly. COVID is another factor that has worsened the situation. There was a 76% increase in overdose deaths in New York homeless shelters from 2019 to 2021, despite the number decreasing the 2 years prior to 2019. The opioid crisis can be felt across the nation and are especially visible living in New York City. So how can we make sense of such a widespread and deadly problem? Trainspotting offers some insight in a similar context. The movie takes place in 90s Edinburgh, Scotland. At the time, Edinburgh had a shockingly high unemployment, high rates of drug use, and an HIV epidemic. The heartfelt recession in the 80s never really ended, and the younger generation did not have much faith that things would get better. Many people turned to heroin during this time. There are many parallels to be drawn to America's situation today, even more so as Scotland is still suffering from a very problematic opioid crisis. Trainspotting is a movie about Mark Renton and his life as a 20-something-year-old junkie. Over the course of the movie, we see him and his friends' repeated attempts and failures to quit heroin. Mark even goes as far as moving to London to start a new life, but his friends show up at his door and trouble finds him again. The movie was a historic hit in British box offices and received a huge cult following. It is the second highest grossing British film in movie history. Despite being well received and influential, many viewers claim that the movie glorified heroin use, from scenes like these.
Take the best orgasm you ever had, multiply it by 1,000 and you're still nowhere near it.
However, many critics and other viewers argue that after a close reading of the whole movie, we would see that the movie is actually a very pragmatic take on addiction. So why is the movie misread as a glorification of heroin use? The movie is very well paced and well done, and many viewers find it entertaining. Over the course of the movie, there are many moments where you find yourself laughing, despite the dark overarching theme of heroin addiction. One way that Trainspotting challenges the norm is that the characters are relatable and people aren't used to relating to addicts. The characters all have bold personalities, and the movie forces you to accept them for who they are. Addicts are usually cast away from society and alienated. People dislike and harass the homeless and have hate for them. Even though Mark does bad things, you relate to him throughout the story. This is because he is human. The movie humanizes addicts and the experience of addiction, which is something that people aren't used to. Multiple critics have said that the main themes of the movie were love and camaraderie. The film is essentially a coming-of-age tale in which our hero must come to terms with the fact that, should he wish for his life to amount to anything, his days of hedonism are numbered. It's just that the stakes are raised because of the fact that Renton's particular brand of youthful folly carries with it a strong possibility of long-term imprisonment or instant death. Trainspotting tells the tale of addicts in a way that humanizes them and gives them personality, while also having overarching themes of love and friendship, which is why viewers may find it relatable.
Another way that the movie challenges convention is because the movie never gives a reason for why Mark uses heroin. He has a normal family relationship that we can see. We're offered no harrowing backstory to justify his poor life choices, no pat psychological explanation to reassure us this could never happen to us, one critic stated. The movie's focus is camaraderie and coming of age, not reasons for addiction or trying to make it seem like addiction won't affect you. The movie is based on the author's own story. Irvine Welsh, the author of the novel Trainspotting, published in 1993, which the movie was based upon, is an ex-addict who based the story off his own drug addiction a decade earlier. The author's personal connection is probably another reason why the movie is so realistic. The movie has a rebellious, anti-capitalist point of view to it. Which would make sense because there are so many youth in Scotland who have never seen capitalism benefit them. The author is also known to be a leftist, and his writing reflects this. So many people are unemployed and they are surrounded by drugs and alcohol and violence and sickness, so why would they like the capitalist society that made things this way? The movie says that doing heroin is a choice to choose pleasure over life. Opening clip. One of the most iconic scenes in the movie is the toilet scene. They are trying to have youthful...
Under the normal run of things, I would have nothing to do with the cunt, but this was not the normal run of things.
Opium suppositories? Ideal for your purposes. Slow release. Bring you down gradually. Custom fucking design for your needs. I want a fucking hit! So I've got me, take it or leave it. You're feeling better now, though, eh?
Oh, aye, for all the good they've done me, I might as well have stuck them up my arse. Heroin makes you constipated. The heroin from my last hit is fading away and the suppositories have yet to melt. I'm no longer constipated.
The fellow comes into it and jumps it again a little bit out to the right, and then comes somewhere that it's got to be all right.
I fantasize about a massive, pristine convenience. Brilliant gold taps, virginal white marble, a seat carved from ebony, a cistern full of Chanel No. 5, and a flunky handing me pieces of raw silk toilet roll. But under the circumstances, I'll settle for anywhere.
it is interesting to watch and gross, it is just a cinematic way of representing the extreme measures that Mark Renton would take to get high. The movie shows the dehumanizing and disgusting sides of addiction in an entertaining movie way. At one point in the movie, while the group is binging heroin, the group's baby, Daisy, is found dead. The scene is actually really disturbing, and many critics cited it, saying that after seeing the whole movie, you wouldn't really think that heroin is fun. The film's more despairing elements that resonate the strongest. Because heroin isn't that fun and nobody's trying to glorify being a junkie. In conclusion, the movie doesn't try to glorify heroin use. It is really entertaining, but also really disturbing because it is meant to reflect the reality of addiction. Instead of seeing addiction as something scary that we should cast away, the movie shows us that addiction is a human story that is more common than we'd like to admit. Moving forward in an opioid crisis in America, we should learn to humanize addiction. By casting away, being unnecessarily afraid of, and hateful towards addicts, we are fostering an unproductive and unsafe environment that doesn't really benefit anyone. Trainspotting teaches us that everyone is a human and has a story, even people who struggle with substance abuse.